Okay, so
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We are doing a Zoom presentation for CSCA, the Connecticut School Counselor Association, for our counselors to help engage students that have been disengaged from the process of school and getting back into the academics with all the challenges that are going on now in the environment we're in. And from what I hear on the news today, don't quote me, it looks like, I won't tell you what they said, but it sounds like we're going to be in this a little while longer. So hopefully this is good information that we can give to you that you can utilize, and we will have time for questions and answers at the end. What I'd like to do now is introduce everyone. My name is Susan Unger. I'm a former school counselor, guidance director, school counseling director. I say guidance director because, God, I've been in this since like 1980, so goes back with different terminologies, but school counseling director. Also with us today is Lisa Kilcourse, who's also with the Connecticut School Counselor Association, and she's going to be helping out with the presentation. We are both vice president-elect of the Fairfield County CSCA organization, and are happy to present this to everyone here. Seated next to me is Donna Seidell. She is an administrator, and she will introduce herself and talk about her experiences and have strategies to share with you. But we are going to start with Carol Balgach, who is a school psychologist and has been in different school systems, and she's going to talk about her experiences and give an overview now. Some strategies that may perhaps help you out, along with special ed teachers and regular teachers. So Carol, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. So again, I'm Carol Balgach. I'm a school psychologist. I've worked most of my career in Fairfield, but I have worked 1 year in Bridgeport, so I have a pretty overall feeling of different students. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about some strategies or how I handle a student that comes to my attention that might not be engaged. So there's a few things, but the first thing that I look at is I look at the whole child. I start from the very basic needs of a child. I'll look to see if that particular student is a special ed student. If they are, I will go back and I read all the evaluations, especially the child's history, so I can gain some knowledge of exactly how the child is functioning, social and emotional. If the child is not special ed, I look to see if an evaluation has ever been done, because many times students come to my attention, they are not special ed, but they have actually had evaluations. So then the next thing I do is I usually talk to the school nurse. I find out how about their hearing and about their vision screening to make sure that is completely normal. And then I really just look at the child's basic needs. How I do that is I usually will call the home and I'll speak to the parent. I'll ask the parent for permission to see the child, and during that conversation, I gather more information. What is the family dynamics? Are the children being fed? Do they need help with food? What are the sleeping? What's the child's sleeping habits? Who's home with the child? Does the parent work at night and the child's home with an older sibling or a relative, someone that may or may not be helping them with homework? How safe does the child feel at home? And then really lastly, is there anything going on in the home that I can help the parents with or direct them to services or resources that they can use? I know that, we cannot control the home environment, but I think gathering before we really start working with the child, gathering as much information as we can really helps us going forward and helping the child to be engaged. So really the first thing I try to do when I meet with the child is build rapport. That with some children can mean one session and they love you. Some other children I've worked with for weeks or for months. And what I try to do is just give the child my undivided attention, positive attention. I'll play games and it'll be a really low key game, something that it doesn't matter who wins. I don't ask them any questions about how they're feeling or what's wrong. I just try to build the trust and to build a relationship with them. And sometimes I do art projects with them. A lot of students really love that. So what I really try to do is focus on what they like. What are their interests? And then I make it very easy for them. And usually what happens is after a while, I don't even have to ask the child, what's going on, or sometimes kids don't even know what's going on. And I don't even have to. Children usually just start telling me things. And a lot of times it's slowly, a lot of times kids are really scared. I assure them that, they can tell me anything. And I do always tell students when they come into a counseling session that everything is confidential, except if they tell me something that would hurt them or someone else. And it's my responsibility to report that. And kids are pretty good. And even if a child told me something really serious and I say, well, okay, but, I'm going to have to call your parents. Most of the time the kids are okay with that. I, will, once they start talking a little bit, I do try to get into some questions and answers on, what's wrong or if nothing's wrong. And I just wanted to tell you a little story. I had a student, this was years ago, and he was totally unengaged in the classroom. He wasn't paying attention. He was failing. He was coming for counseling. He was getting all kinds of interventions and he just didn't make progress. And so we went for an evaluation and we did a whole gamut, cognitive, academics, behavior, ADD, executive functioning, social emotional, everything came out perfect. And we could not qualify the student. The teacher was so mad at me. She just couldn't understand. She was like, there's something wrong with this kid. So, we upped our interventions and we continued on because really, if you can't find anything, there's no way you can make the kid be engaged. As it turned out later on, he was living with his mother and his stepfather, a younger brother, and then a younger sister that was the product of that marriage. The mother was sexually abusing him. And this is why this student totally zoned out when he was in school. Eventually the mother was arrested. He was placed with another family member, and things started to improve. But he left our school, so I wasn't able to follow him. But it's situations like that I try to look back on and remember that sometimes I'm not going to find the answers. I'm not going to be able to engage the student, and that's okay. The next thing that I do is I try to do classroom consultation with the teacher. I think it's really important to meet with the teacher, to support the teacher. Teachers have so much on their plate, and I can't even imagine what they have today with the pandemic and doing remote learning or hybrid learning, or even if they're in school full time, just the stress and everything that they have to do. My daughter's a teacher, my daughter-in-law is a teacher, and they tell me how behind kids are from when they left school last March to where they are now and how difficult it is. So I really try to meet with the teacher. And then I try to look at the child's learning style. Does the child seem distracted? And then I look at the environment. How much stimuli is in that classroom? Where's the child seated? Does the child have auditory processing where background noises might be making the child zone out because he hears the noise in the hallway and he doesn't necessarily, or she doesn't necessarily, um, want to pay attention. And then I try to come up with a plan with the teacher. And I always encourage teachers to have a really positive relationship with the child. And it's hard sometimes because a lot of times the teacher won't like the child because child's a behavior problem, the child's a special ed, the child might be a regular ed, but just zones out. And the teacher's got a lot to deliver. And I have to be understanding to the teacher about that. And so I really try to be a support system and encourage the teacher. Um, and I remember one time I had a student that was really a behavior problem. She eventually turned into special ed, but at this point she wasn't. And nobody wanted her because she was really a behavior problem. Nobody wanted to work with her. She got into second grade. She had a great teacher, but the teacher was kind of the teacher that just taught to the perfect child. And the teacher didn't want to do a behavior chart with her, didn't want to do really anything. But I worked with the teacher, I met with the teacher. And then one day I walked by the classroom and I saw all the other students engaged. And I saw the teacher with this particular student conferencing with her and explaining something about reading to her. And it was so heartwarming to me. I almost cried. I was just so happy that the teacher took that time for that student. So I ran back to my office and I wrote a little thank you note to the teacher, telling her how grateful I was and what I saw and how thankful I was and what that impact was going to do for that student. I put it in her mailbox because we tend to reinforce children, but we also need to really reinforce teachers. They've got a lot on their plate. And then really when I do a consultation with the teacher, whether it's helping her set up the classroom in a different way or just meeting with her and talking with her, I try to be consistent with that. Which is very difficult. It has always been difficult for me because I've always had a very large caseload, but I try to meet with the teacher weekly. A lot of teachers, they don't want to meet with you during their prep because that's their time to prep. But even if you meet with them for 10 or 15 minutes, the support you give them can make all the difference in the world in engaging a student. And really the last thing that I wanted to kind of talk about, that a strategy that I feel really helps, is behavior modification. So, once you meet with the child, you get a sense of their emotional functioning, you establish a rapport, you work with the teacher, then comes the behavior modification. And there's so many different ways in which you can do it. One way that I've done it with a lot of students is check-ins. Have them as soon as they come into school, they come right to me and they check in. I give them a little pep talk. You're going to be great. You're doing good. Or sometimes kids won't come to my office. So I will meet them either at the back door when they come in or right at their classroom. Gets a little challenging if you have a PPT meeting or you have some other kind of meeting, special ed, a team meeting, anything. But I tried to be very consistent. And if I couldn't do it, I would send someone else to meet with them just to really encourage them for the day. And then a lot of times I try to do I start off with a very small chart. Say we want them to engage in reading for 5 minutes or even 2 minutes, depends on the age of the child. And I make the reward, whether it's a sticker or a check, extremely attainable initially. So they can see. And it's just like anybody. If we get a reward for doing something, or if someone says something nice to us or gives us a compliment, it reinforces that behavior to repeat it. So a lot of times it doesn't work and you have to change that behavior mod. You have to do something else. But if you can do that, and then after a while you sort of stretch it. So if there's 2 minutes, you've got them engaged, they get a sticker. From that sticker, they get a reward, whether it's time with me, playing a game, going on the computer, playing a game with their friend. Then after like a week, you make it 5 minutes and you keep stretching it until the student really gets the hang of it. And I guess that's pretty much how I work it. I think one of the things that for me that has helped is having a real love for children and letting the children know that I genuinely care about them. And the other thing sometimes I do is I try to generally really try to catch them doing something good. And when they do something good, I praise them and I say, you know what? That was great. You did a great job. I saw how kind you were to that person. And all of those little things in a child's life does add up. And I think that if you're passionate about children, and I'm sure everybody here is because we all work with children, these are all things that you can take, change, modify, make it work for yourself. But those are the strategies that I would recommend.
So if I could just chime in really quick, Carol, thank you. Those were some great ideas. And I think as many of us have had to pivot to remote learning, we could still do a lot of those strategies. So, Google Meet or Zoom call with teachers,
Absolutely.
one-on-one teachers on a weekly basis and going through their caseloads and classrooms about any concerns, I think could be proactive. And then I like how you said just reinforcing with the teachers, like sending a thank you email, because we're not in the schools, some
Right,
of us,
okay.
but I think, that's a great idea to just send that positive thank you to the teachers too, because they really need our support.
I think they really need it, especially at this time. But most of these things that I talked about can be done on Google Meets or Zoom with the student, with the teacher, with the team.
Yep. Thank you. And people, if you have any questions, you can pop them in the chat and we're happy to answer questions as we go too. So feel free to write in the chat as well.
Thank you so much, Carol. I really appreciate your knowledge and your experiences. And hopefully, I just love the idea of working as a team with the teacher and the student, because it's hard when you have a lot of students to reach them all. And then by reaching the teacher, sometimes you can reach the student too.
Absolutely.
And now I'm going to turn it over to Donna Seidell, and she's going to introduce herself and also talk about her experiences and strategies.
Good afternoon. I'm going to piggyback on a lot of the things Carol talked about too, because she made a lot of really good points in there. I started in early childhood as a primary teacher, taught for many years early childhood, and then I became a reading consultant. I did curriculum language arts for grades K through 8. That was a huge span, but I managed to make that work. Then I became an assistant principal and then a principal. And I worked in education my whole life, loved every minute of it. It wasn't like I was working. That's how much I liked it. And then I retired. So once I retired, when you're so active, you can't just stop. It's not going to work. So Stratford and Trumbull called me back. When there was an administrator out, either an assistant principal or principal, I went in and covered the school. And I loved it. It gave me the advantage of going into so many different schools and seeing how they worked. It was always an adventure. And then this year, I took a position in Trumbull and all looking forward to it, to get my kid fix, going in and enjoying myself. And then the pandemic hit. So there I was. I would say my computer skills weren't terrible, but I didn't know Google Meet, I didn't know Google Classroom, I didn't know any of that. And so a couple times I was just like, I can't do this. But then I said, buck up, you got to do it. And I got help from IT, they helped me, and also for the media specialist. And I learned what I had to learn. Not above that, but I learned what I had to learn to survive. I had all my meetings like this. And I'm glad that I did it. The teachers, when we were blindsided, we left school and just didn't come back after that. There was food in the refrigerator, it was the whole 9 yards. We never got to go back in. And then they banned it so you couldn't go in. And they needed books. And there were so many problems to solve. but we worked collaboratively. We worked with our custodian, who was awesome, and we tried to get some of those problems straightened out. The teachers, let me just say this, you know, I understand about the hospitals and the doctors and the nurses and all the healthcare. But let me tell you, the teachers have so many demands on them right now, the parents, by the district, and they're putting pressure on themselves that I just worry about that. Like, I just wanted to be a support for them and a cheerleader for them. It's so difficult to coordinate kids at home and kids in the classroom, the live kids. Like, they were like angels when they first came back. They were sitting in their seats doing their thing, but then they get used to it because they're kids. And then the teacher's trying to have all those balls in the air. So we had a lot of talks about that, like, you know, what can we do to make this better? And as an administrator, I really listened, and they knew what needed to be done, and we tried to solve some of this. As you know, every district makes their own decisions, has their own protocol. So I always checked at the district level when I wanted to try some things. And they were so overwhelmed, they were happy that we were trying things, I think, and they used them in other schools. When the kids, at the beginning, they were online at the beginning. The first couple of weeks wasn't bad. They were working out all the technology, and that's what they worked on. But then once that was set up, we had to give all the kids computers, make sure they had Wi-Fi. So the kids liked it. It was novel. They were home. But that wore off pretty quickly. So what happened was a lot of the kids weren't even going on in the morning. So the teachers, asked them a question that they had to answer so they would know who was on board. And that kind of helped at least to know who was there. Now, this is back in March, April, way back. And then if they still weren't coming on, or they came on and left, the special ed team and myself, and I made personal calls home, I'd contact the parents, and because most of the parents were working, and the child was with like a high school sibling, and you know where that's going. So the child was kind of on their own, you know, going on bad websites, that whole 9 yards, you know. So I would call up, talk to the parent, talk to the child, bring the child in and talk to them. And we tried that. Of course, that didn't work for long either, because once you weren't there, they kind of did their own thing. But then we came up with what I thought was a pretty good idea. We had reading pairs, we had interns in the school. We made a list, as the special ed team did and the teachers, of kids that really were reluctant about participating. And every morning, there was a bunch of kids in the morning, a bunch in the afternoon, but 1-to-1, that person will check in with that child to make sure that, okay, what are we going to do today? Let's go over the lessons. Do you understand everything? What can I help you with? Not a long thing, but just so it made them feel important, like somebody cared about them and gave them that little boost that they needed. And that was a huge success. It helped the parents out tremendously, and it helped the teachers, and at least the child was participating at some level. I'm not saying it was great, but at least they were engaged. And we found that to be one of the best things that we did. The other thing we did is when the kids came back to school, we have cohorts, Monday and Tuesday for one group, Thursday and Friday for the other, Wednesday, remote learning. Some of the kids were great they were great when they were in school, but when they were home, they did nothing. So we looked into their IEPs. We started with special ed, and we made decisions that we would like some of them back 4 days a week, the 4 days. Well, some of the older ones weren't happy because now they have to come to work to school 4 days and work instead of, you know, staying home and not doing too much. But that really helped because that way they were with the teacher, they were in school, and some kids really needed that. So that was a good thing, I thought. Let me just see if I'm a little bit here. We're okay? Where's our time? I'm watching the time. The most important thing to me as a teacher and an administrator, and I was a teacher longer than I was an administrator, is about relationships. And that's what Carol alluded to. If you don't have relationships with kids, nothing will happen, whether it's a pandemic or not. That is key. And it's really hard for some people to have relationships with kids, even though they're teachers. So you got to guide them and kind of help them through that because it could be done, but they're not really sure how to approach it in some ways. And the important thing is they got to establish consistency when working with kids and routines. And if you get those with them in school, you know when you're in school you do that. But you do it also when you're doing it remote too, because that's what they respond to. That's what they look for. So I think those are that, and no matter what else I say after this, those are the most important things I think to think about. How do you engage the kids? So some are home, some are in school. I mean, I've gone in the classrooms and the teacher's got the screen and she goes, Mrs. Seidell, come on in and say hi to the ones at home and wave, and then the ones in their seat are waving. And it's just, it was very hard. But you know what? There's such good teachers that you all are, that you could do it. You know what to do. Some of the ideas, they used a lot of interactive games with the kids because, you know, they like friendly competition. That's always good with kids. They tried to work with one child at a time, or they work in small groups. You know, we have the safety, you know, like all of you have with the plexiglass, all of that. They used, what's the one, I'm trying to think of the one they used, seesaw. They used things to do slides, the kids did slides, and that was really creative. That works in school or at home, both of them. Keep the lessons short, because that'll sustain their attention, because, you know, they're laying on the couch, the dog's jumping on them, they're holding the cat and all of that. So the teachers would say, you know, you got to put the animals on the side and really look at what we're doing next. This is important. And then they would re-engage with that, you know. You need to stop and give brain breaks, they call them. They have little videos, I'm sure you know, but with exercise and songs, and they do that, and then they go back to the work. Another big thing is kids can help teachers answer questions without unmuting themselves. Like the teacher will say, stand up and walk around your chair, do something physical, it doesn't have to be that, to indicate a certain answer. And that was, the kids love doing that too, you know. There's a lot of things, a lot of ideas. One teacher said, this was actually my speech and language person, they use something called boom cards. I'm not really familiar with those, but I didn't have a chance to look it up, but I'm going to see what that is, because that's something they use with them too, for to hold their attention. And does anybody have any questions at this point, or anything you want to add, or something you've used that you can share with everybody?
You know, I really liked what you said about the child getting up and moving. Yeah. I think that is super important for kids.
I was thinking that too.
Yeah.
I think because they're just sitting there in front of the screens and checking out or playing around behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I think the movement is really important.
Even if they're in school and they're in a classroom, I think movement is a very important thing.
Mm-hmm.
It is, for sure. I have one great story. Oh my God, it's probably unbelievable, but it's what happened when I was there. One of the teachers came in to me and she was like white, and we were doing remote. And she said, I got to tell you what happened. And of course I have 3 sons. I've seen them all. Okay. So she said, one of my children, I was reading them a book. It was one of those long dandelion, I think it was. And she said, the child got up. And all of a sudden, she didn't know where the child went, but she just said, oh, the mother's probably there. The child, I told you this, did I? The child goes into the bathroom because he didn't know, you know, I don't want to leave the lesson, I'm gonna miss the story, and goes in and goes to the bathroom and then goes back on the screen. The kids didn't notice because she did something to the computer to turn off what they could see, but she was there like, I can't believe this. So I said, well, you know what? The kid was trying to do the right thing. And that was the decision. I'll just take the computer with me. And I said, you got to have a conversation with them. This was 2nd grade. Make sure that they're still on the screen. So then I had the conversation with the mom, who was an attorney, actually, who was lovely. And I said, here's what happened. Of course, the parents died. I said, it's not a bad thing. I said, you know what? He solved his problem. He couldn't wait to go to the bathroom. This is the story. So it was very creative. So just have that conversation with them also, that you're on the screen when you have that open. So that was, we had a good laugh with that one for a while, but you have to have some humor, and that's important too. Always have humor no matter what you're doing. Even when things are going terribly wrong, you got to bring some humor in with it too. I think that's big.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So just, we had said that we would give out some self-care prizes. So I'm putting in the chat. I'm randomly picking some people and I put my email in. If you could email me your mailing address, if you see your name pop up as we go.
Nice.
Thought we could offer some self-care for people. So Andrea, you're our first one. If you want to email me your mailing address.
That's cute. Prizes, just like we were talking about, some prizes, yeah?
Yeah.
Correct.
Some rewards for today's conference.
And I know, I mean, you're all so busy, and to show up for a conference like this, to extend your day, I have to give you a lot of credit. I think that's so professional and shows so much how you're caring for the students and everything else that are in your charge. I don't know if there's any questions that anybody might have for the speakers, but this is your opportunity if you want to ask them anything.
Something up there.
Do you have a question? Someone's asking about having class assemblies. They tried a class of 2024 Google Meets and it didn't go well. There were too many kids. So if anybody has experience doing large
Do that. Yeah.
large virtual.
You know, one of the things I just thought off the top of my head, because I do a couple of Zoom meetings with some friends from different groups. One of the things that's really important is not having everybody talk at once, because nobody can really hear what everybody else is saying. So if you're doing a classroom morning meeting, I think it's important for everybody to kind of, you know, raise their hand so it's everybody can comprehend what they're saying.
Yeah, that's a good point. So maybe muting everybody
Yeah.
at the start and having hand raising.
Yeah.
Okay, I would say, just to sort of wrap up and to, you know, sort of summarize, hopefully you have gotten some good strategies. I'm going to, I wrote down the strategies. Hopefully I'll get them to CSCA so we can hand them out, and we are recording this meeting. If any of these strategies might work for you and for your school, that would be terrific. And I guess what I want to say is I think all of you are such troopers.
Sure.
One of the things that I take from this is we're all in schools as a team. We're all
Mhm.
supporting ourselves with each other and helping the students. Last thing I want to say is they have mentioned having a good outlook on it, even though it's so tough and it's so challenging, keeping up a sense of humor, trying to support the teachers, support your administrators and everyone else. We all get through this together. And I guess, as we have said, having a good sense of humor is the best thing.
It is.
I
Absolutely.
know I know a student who was 5 years old who just got so tired of Zooming, he put his stuffed rabbit on. So his stuffed rabbit was on the screen. When the teacher came and told his parents, he was humiliated, but my grandson learned a lesson from that, and the teacher didn't get mad because it's just kids being kids. And I think that's what we have to remember. It's kids being kids, and God bless them for their genuineness. They're authentic. That's why we're in this. We just love the way that the children are. So hopefully this helped you. Lisa, I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
We do have a couple people asking similar questions. If students
okay.
are just, so just one final question. We have, there's people that are just shutting down, like students that aren't even logging in or just shutting down, not attending, and they're full remote. So are there any suggestions, or does anybody have any success with students who are just not even logging in at all?
You've really got to make a contact with the adults.
Yeah, I was going to say contact the parents.
That's the important thing, because that's the only way it'll change, because the kids aren't going to change on their own unless they know that somebody noticed. And then, like I said, you could have a conference with the parents and then at the end include the student in that and stress the importance of them, you know, with learning and so on and so on. But I think that you've got to make, you know, contacts to make that happen.
And then some people in the chat are saying their school resource officer has been a help to do some home checks. But I think calling home is a great idea, but even as suggested before, even just having kids make a goal of just like 5 minutes of logging in or a phone call instead of a login or something fun just to kind of get it started. But, you know, like we said, this is not going to be perfect. And, you know, it's easy to be hard on yourself for it, but I think, you know, this is a team and just trying new things and knowing it's not going to be perfect.
And I think they have to have a reason to log in. So if they know it's going to be attention or something positive, I think that will help.
Yep.
For sure.
Start small.
Mhm.
So yeah, I'd like to thank everybody for joining us today. I know many of us are remote or going remote, so we're starting to dwindle, but coming and showing up is huge and we really appreciate it. And thank you to our 2 speakers and thank you to Sue. And thank you to everybody.
Thank you. And everybody have a happy and healthy Thanksgiving.
Yes, for sure.
Yes, happy Thanksgiving.
Be well, everybody.
Thank you.
Yes. Thanks.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.